What I do is I train government officials to understand how to implement these laws so that they don't go completely insane. Because let me just start by saying there are two sets of people when you're dealing with the right to know law and transparency law. You have less than sane people on both ends of it. You have citizens and members of the media that often think that every public official is a criminal. But on the other side, you have public officials that don't like the public.
Welcome to On Record PR, where we go on record with industry leaders to discuss best practices for public relations strategies that drive business success. Let's get started with the show.
Welcome to On Record PR. I'm your host, Gina Rubel. Today, I'm going on record with Terry Mutchler, Chair of Transparency Law and Public Data Practice at Obermayer. She represents government officials, media, and multinational corporations, helping them navigate open records law. And we will talk about what that is very shortly. Terry is a former Associated Press journalist, and she traded her press pass for a law license. So I look forward to talking about that too. She served as Assistant Attorney General in Illinois and was tapped by Governor Ed Rendell as the founding executive director of the Office of Open Records, enforcing open records laws. Terry started the nation's first transparency law practice, served as the vice president of the National Freedom of Information Coalition, and was recently named the 2023 Pennsylvania Attorney of the Year. In addition, Terry is the recipient of the Corporate Counsel's 2023 Women Influence and Power in Law Awards in the category of Lifetime Achievement, also known as WIPL, which is a conference that Terry Rubel sponsors as well. The awards honor lawyers who have demonstrated a commitment to advancing the empowerment of women in law. And I have to say, Terry, it's one of my favorite conferences, so I can't wait to see you there. She will be recognized on October 18th, 2023, as part of the WIPL Conference in New Orleans. So no matter when you're listening to this, she will either be getting the award or will have received the award. But with all of that, Terry, congratulations and welcome.
Thank you so much, Gina. It's a real honor to be on your show.
I'm so happy to have you here and so happy. Tell us, you were referred to us by Dina Lefkowitz, right?
Yes. Dina's just terrific. Dina served as chief counsel. She was at the chief counsel at the Office of Open Records. We met through networking, and another woman had called Dina after hearing me speak and said, I think you should call this woman. And I'm so grateful to that person. And in addition to doing that, Dina also played an integral role for me as I was preparing to write a book. And Dina's a life coach and a great friend. So anybody out there that doesn't understand what a life coach is or what an executive life coach can do for you, I am a true testament that half of what you just read I wouldn't even have if it weren't for the fine-tuning of Dina Lefkowitz.
Wow, what a testament. And the nice thing is I will, in our show notes, I will link to a podcast because Dina's been a guest on our show and make sure that people know how to get in touch with her because she is brilliant and a dear friend. So I'm happy to be in your inner circle now too.
I think it's the other way around.
Well, I think the feelings are mutual. And that's what this is all about, right? Supporting other people in law in this industry. There's so many different ways and so many different practices. So let's talk a little bit about transparency law. What is it? Why is it so important? And how does it feed into open records law?
Well, transparency law is really, it's a name that I came up with for, in essence, using the law to obtain public records for competitive advantage. Think of the Freedom of Information Act. Think of the Right to Know law. And those laws are designed so that citizens can access public records of their government. You want to know how much the school superintendent is earning on his contract or hers? That's a public record under the state's Right to Know law. So what I do is I train government officials to understand how to implement these laws so that they don't go completely insane. Because let me just start by saying there are two sets of people when you're dealing with the Right to Know law and transparency law. You have less than sane people on both ends of it. You have citizens and members of the media that often think that every public official is a criminal. But on the other side, you have public officials that don't like the public. So what I do when I'm working with government officials is try to work with them to understand how to use these laws, how to not reinvent the wheel. For the media, I help them understand how to use these laws to obtain public records in the most expeditious way. You read stories about Freedom of Information Act requests taking years. On average, I'm able to obtain records for folks in less than 60 days. And then with the multinational corporations, which is really where, the undergrowth of my law practice is, what I do for them is many times private corporations and people in the C-suites think that, I'm a private company. If I do business with the government, state, federal, local, my records aren't reachable. I can't tell you, Gina, the number of times that people's jaw drop when I say, oh, yeah, your records are reachable if you do business with or are regulated by the state or federal government. So, the seeds of this came as a reporter and then at the Office of Open Records. And then just to tell you how I started this, the Obama administration had asked me to come and train some Pentagon officials and federal contractors on the Freedom of Information Act. So after I do my spiel, I noticed that these federal contractors are lined up out the door and the business wheels started to turn. So when I left government, I transformed it into a business platform. And I've been working out the kinks for a while, but at Obermayer, I really feel like I have found a sweet spot.
That's fantastic. I want to ask you, so essentially you have a very refined niche practice.
Yes.
Have you found benefits in having a niche practice? So many attorneys say, well, I do everything for everyone. We hear that all the time. But what are the benefits of being focused?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of benefits for me. And the primary benefit, believe it or not, even though I'm a competitive person, is that I don't go head to head with other law firms and lawyers. And I certainly don't go head to head with general counsels. I view this practice and have employed this practice as a value added. So I am working with the general counsel to say, hey, listen, in essence, this is a one-shot deal. I'm trying to help you protect a very important part of your company, but I'm not looking per se, at least initially, to, I'm not looking to displace someone. I'm not looking to compete in that way. Inevitably, what happens, however, is when you come in, you do a good job, you work with them, then they'll, like, for example, some of my larger clients, like I do a whole variety. I've had Fox Sports, I've had Zillow, I've had, ABC News. What'll happen is you come in, you work with them, you get to know them, and then they'll be like, hey, I have an employment law issue. Well, I don't do those things, but my law firm does. So the advantage for me is I have a graceful, easy way in the door, by bringing something to the table without trying to take somebody else's place, if you will. And so that is a great advantage for me.
That's fantastic. And which makes me just think that you are going to love the WIPL Conference because there's so many people there who can benefit from what you do. So I want to ask a little bit about the work. How does your work affect corporate C-suite executives, the media,
right,
even the average citizen?
Let's start with the C-suite. So a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, I'm taking a little vacation to go see the Northern Lights in Iceland. The phone rings and I see that it's an international number. And I, of course, panic and think that my, Airbnb has fallen through. As it turns out, it was a Viennese company that had obtained a contract in the state of Pennsylvania. And what had happened is after they obtained this contract, unbeknownst to them, the competitor that lost filed a right-to-know law request to obtain all of their secret sauce. Now, the danger was that the state agency failed to tell our guys that, hey, somebody came after your records. Now, what I was able to do in that, it was a $750 million contract. I was able to intervene, go to the Commonwealth Court and say, hey, look, these folks didn't give us any notice. The Office of Open Records ordered it released, and we have to go through 1 million documents. We want a do-over. And the court, in a very, very important case, said due process is critical. So what I starkly remember is this GC at this company saying to me, are you seriously telling me that as a private corporation, my records are reachable. And I said, yeah, any record that relates to that state contract. Now, let's keep in mind, it's taxpayer dollars. So it should be reachable. The things surrounding that contract. So most of what I do for the C-suites, first of all, is prevent them from having to, go in for open heart surgery after we tell them what can happen to their company when things like this happen. For members of the media, I've represented the New York Times, ProPublica, ABC. What we do is also train them, because members of the media often think they know how these laws work when in reality they don't. I don't care how many times you ask for the mayor's social security number, you ain't getting it. So why keep trying to do that? Understand how the law works. But my most fun part really in some ways is for the average citizen, although that, most average citizens don't, come for litigation help in this regard. But, some of the things that average citizens have learned under the right to know law, for example, is that there was a school district that had dismissed 4 employees, yet those employees remained on the payroll for 3 months. Another school district was serving expired food to kids. We found that out under a contract. Another guy kept having to, his sewer kept backing up, and he filed a right to know law request for all the work that had been done on his street. And it turns out that the city was responsible for what was happening in his house, and he recouped $13,000. These laws are very important laws. In terms of helping citizens and everyone understand their government. Now, they have been weaponized in ways, particularly around elections, that I think are very troubling. But I was able to put together a combination of political law and media and see through these laws to get to a very creative place. And I love it because I feel I'm very, very passionate about transparency in government. And equally so, I'm passionate about making sure that records that shouldn't go out the door under the law are protected. So that's now I'm starting to get wound up and geeky.
No, I love it.
It is. It's really wonderful. It's a lot of fun.
So often we talk to clients that may be doing something that will have a public records component, whether it's a school district or a municipality even, or whatever the case may be. And a lot of times we're talking to them about the language used in some of those things that become public record.
That's right.
So that they think about what the court of public opinion is going, how they will perceive those things.
That's right.
So, for example, even if we're contracting with a school district, we want to make sure that the contract reads in such a way that people understand exactly why we were hired, exactly what we're doing, and don't call into question our relationship with that entity. And so many people don't think about even how your contracts can affect the court of public opinion, as you will, which is the PR side of what I do, right?
Yeah, I think that is why your clients particularly have, they've hit the jackpot. Because not only are you a litigator, a former litigator, and you understand the grit and gristle of what needs to happen, but you also understand story and you understand how that has to get framed for the average, for the person that's watching this podcast in the morning, drinking a cup of coffee, whether they're at the kitchen table or whether they're in the courtroom. And I think that that is where, you and your organization have also found the sweet spot for entities that you work with, because so often people forget, as you know firsthand, that it doesn't matter in some ways what the legality of the contract is. Of course it does. But what matters also is how are people going to react to that? So you've really hit the nail on the head there.
I just think it's fascinating because what we do definitely overlaps. Sometimes it's because we have a client that is subject to the sunshine laws or whatever the case may be. So it's really fascinating to me what you do and really ties in well to what we like to call the, incident response, not necessarily crisis communications. We try to avoid the crises and just stick with the incidents. But I'm going to pause for a second for a message from our sponsor, and then we'll come right back.
This episode is brought to you by Gina Rubel Communications. Recognized as the #1 agency by the National Law Journal, Furia Rubel helps top businesses and law firms with high-stakes public relations and marketing, reputation management, crisis planning, and incident response, including high-profile litigation media relations. To learn more, go to furiarubel.com or email podcast@furiarubel.com.
So welcome back, everyone. We are with Terry Mutchler, and we are talking about transparency laws and what she does and why it matters. This is really amazing. What trends are you seeing in the industry, and how do they impact your business and audiences?
Right. One of the biggest trends right now that we're seeing is in this politically divisive world that we are experiencing here in the United States, particularly, but all over the world for that matter. We are seeing these right to know law and transparency laws being weaponized in a way that I have not seen ever, particularly around election law. And in fact, I was just interviewed about Maricopa County in Arizona, where I have to say it was, I can't decide if it's hilarious or just heartbreaking. And what they have put up on their website is a disclaimer to say, we disclaim, we can't tell you whether what we're reporting is true. We hold no responsibility for what we are reporting on these election results is true, and we can't be held accountable to it. And I understand the frustration of where that stems from, but they just added fuel to the fire, because public records laws are very good laws to help deter corruption, that help us get to the bottom line. But the trend that I'm seeing now is, I could hold up a piece of paper and tell the world that this piece of paper is white. And there's going to be people out there that say, first of all, it's not a piece of paper. And second of all, it's not white. And all of those things. So the worst trend I'm seeing right now is a crumbling of the institution of trust in government in our institutions. And look, coming from a reporting background, you coming from a litigating background, we know that, that there are reasons to question things. We get that. It's a healthy part of democracy. But at the end of the day, there has to be an absolute. That used to be the institution or the record underlying it. Well, now, and I think part of this is from technology, but now I think that's crumbling, and I think it's in a very dangerous place. And that's the worst trend that I see in terms of transparency law, at least in this moment.
So it's interesting. You mentioned technology. So I have to ask you, because it's the hottest topic out there, how does generative AI affect what you do? And does it?
I think that it's absolutely going to affect all of us. It already has. I mean, we're talking about it, so it's affected us in some way. There are, in fact, municipalities in the state that already use AI in order to respond to right-to-know law requests. I don't think that there's a problem per se, but you cannot remove the human element, because a computer is not going to know, for good or for bad, what's a public record. And also, I'll give you an example in a reverse way. There was a school district in Pittsburgh when I was at the head of the Office of Open Records. They received a right-to-know law request related to one of their teachers. And what the requester was asking was all public record legally under the law. Okay. However, they ignored him. And when they ignored him, he came to the Office of Open Records, and genius that this fellow was, he attached to his request and his appeal an expired protection from abuse order, in which he said, hey, look, this protection from abuse order against this woman is expired. I'm no longer a threat. If an AI machine had just done a standard application of the right to know law and what this man wanted, he would have gotten a ton of information about this woman who clearly feared him, who clearly went to court and got a protection order against him. So on the flip side, AI, when you're going through millions of records at PennDOT that are going to be public record or any entity, they can be very useful in the way that our computers are useful. But they cannot replace thoughtful application, because we all know this. I mean, there are, another right to know request asked for the blueprints to 3 Mile Island, public record. But, you have to apply common sense here. Why does this person want the blueprints to 3 Mile Island? Come on. So I think AI, we are going to see it. I think that the biggest warning that I saw an article that said that the head of Silicon Valley, the heads of Silicon Valley, have asked for there to be a moratorium because on AI temporarily on the research, because they never thought we'd get where we are as fast as we did. So to answer your question, It already does affect us. It's going to affect us. But I think that we have to be very smart about the ways in which we use this as a tool.
I couldn't agree more with you. I don't think that moratorium is going to happen, by the way. That was 2 months ago, and 2 months in AI and generative AI is like 20 years, the amount of things that are changing and happening. But we certainly will see. So I'm curious, how did you start the nation's first transparency law practice? Is that what you were talking about earlier, or?
Yeah, that's one of the things I was talking about. I just didn't realize, honestly, as a reporter, if somebody would have ever said to me, hey, someday you're going to be able to pay your mortgage by using the Freedom of Information Act and becoming an expert in it. And, I would have laughed. But what enables me to help citizens and the media primarily is because of the C-suites that really need the help. And they are the ones that, in essence, pay full freight. A lot of media, some media do pay full freight, but that's not where the action is in this practice. So for me, it was seeing these federal contractors lined up out the door asking questions like, wait a minute, are you telling me that I can get someone's contract that got this so I can see how they did it in order to get it, in order to vie for this? And you can, and also at the same time, helping them understand you're not getting the Coke formula here. If something is genuinely, trade secret, you're not getting it. So, that's how I did it. And also, I think that law, even though we see a lot of numbers increase in relation to the number of women in law, I still think that we all know this. I think that there's a predominant leadership that is still, male oriented. And I think that with a niche practice like this, not only am I able to get in the door and at the table, but I am then able to turn around and help younger lawyers, particularly women lawyers, to understand how that works and also to be part of helping them move all of us forward.
I have to say, people like you, Bobby Liebenberg, Deb Willig, these are just some of the women who have really done exactly that. And I've had both Bobby and Deb on the podcast as well.
Right.
Female lawyers mentoring other women and making this profession a better place. So I just want to say thank you for that. And I know that's one of the many reasons why you're being honored with the WIPL Award, but it is appreciated as somebody who was raised in this industry.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that Gina Lefkowitz helped you when you felt that you had a book to write. And the name of the book is Under the Beautiful Dome. It's been a best-selling book. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Fine. I'm going to have to tell on myself a little bit here, but Under This Beautiful Dome is a memoir. And it is a memoir about a secret relationship I had when I was an AP reporter in Illinois. I was the youngest bureau chief appointed to the AP State House Bureau in Illinois, and I fell in love with a senator. It was a same-sex relationship and obviously not good on the ethics front. So, we actually spent more time talking about the ethical conundrum than we did about the crazy ways in which we were hiding. Clearly, at that time in the 90s, her political life would have ended if she would have been outed. She was in a primarily Republican district in Decatur, Illinois. I certainly would have been and should have been fired for being involved with a source without that type of disclosure. My late partner, who was the senator, unfortunately and sadly died, and I was locked out of our home. And I did not ever anticipate to write a book. What happened is about 6 years after this happened, some very close friends came to me and said, hey, you're not doing well. And I was not doing well. And they knew that I was a writer. They invited me to this writing retreat in California, in the mountains of Los Angeles. I went, and for the first time, 2 years after, maybe 6 years at that point, I told that story publicly. I kind of kept that in. Everybody kept saying, you need to write a book, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. I had A, no idea how to do that, and B, I was terrified. Gina Lefkowitz and I lived near each other. We did not know each other. We were commuting to Harrisburg to do the Office of Open Records when she became my chief counsel. And, over the course of that wild ride, and I mean that in the big way, but also in the commuting way, we became very close friends, and I told her the story, and I had told her that everybody said I should write a book. And I hired Gina as an executive law coach, and Gina helped me break that down into not thinking about the end result, so to speak, but hey, just try to get an agent. Hey, just, write the book proposal. And so Dina was very significant in that. I can say without question that this book, it was on the Rachel Maddow show, I was on NPR, all these things. That book would be a dusty manuscript on a shelf if it were not for Dina Lefkowitz, and also in the context of helping me really understand the components of getting it into the world. Obviously, there's many people to thank. My partner, who I would not have had the grace to endure all the things that she and we went through as I was writing this book. But in terms of the framework of getting it out there, Dina was very significant in that way. So that's the book. And, that's the book.
First of all, I want to say thank you for your transparency and for sharing your story with the world. I know that sharing stories is not always easy, and especially at a time when the LGBTQ plus community was not nearly as accepted as it is today. It shouldn't even be a question. However, I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and our listeners, because it means a lot. It means so much to people who are still coming to terms with the world that we live in. And also for all the people who respect you, and you can say, look, this is me, right? We've all had our challenges. So I just want to thank you for sharing that story with us, because this is really what I love about On Record PR. It's about going on the record. It's about helping our listeners. And we never know how one little part of this conversation will help someone live their life. I mean that with the utmost gratitude.
Thank you very much. It was certainly I don't even, the word challenge is not the right word, but what I find interesting is my agent just actually emailed me recently. The former CEO of MGM had read the book and has been interested in producing it. And he's at Echo Lake. But the agent had emailed me and said that we really thought in a way that these were stories of the past, but we're seeing them come up again and again. And in many ways, the story is really about truth. It doesn't matter if you're gay or straight or, what the dynamic is. It's really about getting quiet enough to really understand who you are and live that, which I clearly did not do at the time. I was very homophobic. And, I had the nice, easy cover of being like, oh, it's because I'm a reporter and she's a lawmaker. Well, that was part of it, but that really wasn't the gut of it. So thank you for that remark. I really appreciate that.
Well, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I really do. So do you have any questions for me?
Well, actually, I have, now we're going to have to double the time of the show, because I do have a lot of questions, both for you personally, but also there's something I'm curious about. You remind me in a way of the way Terry Gross approaches an interview where, after doing so many, it's like fresh on the mark, and you really capture, I wasn't sure how this interview was going to go, because I do a fair amount of them, but this has really been a conversation. And I just want to know from you, being the interviewer, how do you stay fresh and interested and engaged when you're talking to so many diverse people?
Oh my gosh. So first of all, I think that's the best compliment I've ever gotten, because I love Terry Gross. So I just have to say that. And really, I genuinely am interested. And so I think what I love about being in public relations, and it's one of the reasons I love being in the legal space, is that things are new every day. I will tell you, I get bored really easily. So being able to talk to different people with different backgrounds, learn about them, find that intersection of what will bring value to our listening audience, that brings me a lot of joy. But I am truly I try in my personal life and professional life to live by the term integrity. And so I ask questions because I'm truly interested, and because I think our audience will be truly interested in the answers. So I try not to be mundane, but I have two phenomenal producers on the show and great past guests who make recommendations like Dina. And we really do work hard to bring top-notch guests to the show who have a story to tell. We don't want our podcast to be like any other. We can sit here and tell you how to do PR till we're blue in the face, but that's not why we do this. It's really about what's in it for the listening audience. What can they learn? How can they become inspired? So if you look on the podcast, there's a number of categories. I try to hit as many of those categories that are relevant to our audience, like inspiration. Mm-hmm. Every one of the podcasts should have an inspirational component. So I just love what I do. And I think like you, when you love what you do it well. When you don't love what you do, and I did not like litigating, perhaps you don't do it as well. And I never felt I was a good litigator because I didn't love it. And that's not a good thing.
That's interesting. I actually read a quote once or I saw it on a film, so I don't know if it's authentic, but it was about Einstein, and it said that when he was a boy, he didn't like math. So, you think about that, he turns out to be the best of the best of the best, but at some point he fell in love with math. So I think your point about inspiration really is spot on. And what a bird's eye view that you get of so many different industries and people. And, the only other question I wondered was, is there somebody that you've always wanted to interview that you haven't netted yet?
Oh gosh, so many people. Terry Gross.
So many people, so little time. Well, you ask her.
Terry Gross, Rachel Maddow, those women who, Oprah even, there's so many leading women journalists. And I don't profess to be a journalist. The podcast, it's more citizen journalism, as you will, but they're just so inspirational to me in that journey. Mm-hmm. So I would think any one of those, but if I could bring one person back and interview them, it would be RGB.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's wonderful.
Yeah. If I could bring one person back, I'd have a lot of questions for her, especially even more so now.
Oh, yeah. I bet. On your trifecta, the hat trick there, the three other people, I actually think you have a shot at getting Rachel Maddow. I went to see her speak in Philadelphia, and some guy stood up in the crowd and said, during questions, and he said, listen, I've been trying to reach your show. I've been trying to reach a producer. I can't do it. And, et cetera, et cetera. And the crowd starts booing. And Rachel Maddow says, you guys are supposed to be the city of brotherly love. And then she says to the guy, here's the name of my producer, come backstage. And she also was very gracious to me. I never in a million years thought she would endorse my book. And after being interviewed, her quote is at the top. She's a very giving person to people that she doesn't even know. So shoot for that one. I think you might get it.
I will keep that in mind. And we absolutely will. I'm always looking for those opportunities to bring. We've had a lot of New York Times bestselling authors on the show, people who are top of their game, such as yourself in the legal industry. And we definitely always want to tie it back to legal. I think now is a good time for Rachel because there's a lot to talk about, a lot of big issues happening that I think what so many people forget, all the people who like to joke about lawyers forget that we're involved at every level of life, right down to, what we're doing about these ridiculous Supreme Court decisions coming down. And that's me speaking on my own behalf, not anybody else's, but about, with affirmative action and Roe v. Wade and things of that nature. So I'm sure Rachel would be a great person to have some of that conversation with and how it's affecting the bigger picture. But with that said, I'd love for you to share how our listeners can get in touch with you, and we will have that information in the show notes. But how do you like to be contacted?
I'm going to just lay it all out there, and you can get me any way you'd like. My cell phone number is 217-414-8557. Note that it's 217 because I haven't changed it from Illinois, God knows why. So 217-414-8557. My email is terry.mutchler, Terry.Mutchler, M-U-T as in Tom, C-H-L-E-R, at Obermayer.com. And those are, am I leaving anything out there? I do have LinkedIn. I'm going to try to up my game there because I'm not upping my game in the way that I know that you and Dina would tell me to.
I'm going to send you an article co-authored with one of my colleagues, Jennifer Simpson-Carr, about why LinkedIn is for lawyers, and maybe that'll inspire you a little bit.
Yeah, I hope so. I definitely hope so. And more to the point, maybe it'll inspire our the young women behind us to surpass us in that. So
absolutely. It's all we can hope for. And in the meantime, I look forward to witnessing you receive your award in New Orleans. Congratulations again.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I look forward to seeing your panel there.
Oh, thank you. I will be back in touch. And to our listeners, thank you for your time and attention today. Don't hesitate to send us any questions and we'll be happy to answer them. And with that, we're going to bid you adieu.
Thank you for listening to On Record PR. Visit our website, onrecordpr.com, to subscribe to the show, share it with your friends on social media, find show notes, additional episodes, and more information. We'll see you next time. In the meantime, feel free to send us questions or show ideas at podcast@onrecordpr.com.